And mic is working. Okay, hello. Welcome to OASIS Lunchtime Talk. I'm your host, Elina Koskinen today, and we have Juan Belmonte-Ávila talking about playing with Asynchronies, and you will be introducing yourself, so I will exit now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Elina. Elina, did I do an okay job? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here, especially considering the weather that we have today. It's a lovely weather, but also not very convenient, not very practical. So I really appreciate those of you who decided to join me in person. I tend to speak quite fast and sometimes a bit too loud. So if you can tell me if I'm speaking too loud for the mic, mostly, I will appreciate it. So as Elina said, my name is Juan Francisco Belmonte-Ávila. Normally, when I'm in English-speaking context, I say that my name is Juan, but most people in Spanish context, Spanish-speaking context, use the name Juanfran. And my friends, my family, my loved ones, and even my students call me by this name, Juanfran. You can either use Juan if you find it more comfortable because it's shorter, or Juanfran if you want to go the Spanish route. Tom, for instance, uses Juanfran, right? Yeah, you do. So some people do. So I will speak a little bit about myself. Most of you, I guess, don't know much about me, and I want to say a few things. So I am an associate professor at the University of Murcia in Spain, and I work at the Department of English, where I teach cultural studies, okay? You might question what's my connection with games, or what's my connection with my teaching with games, and I can give you a very quick summary. I use games such as Undertale. I've used pen and paper games such as the Call of Cthulhu, or games such as Dream Daddy or Honey Heist, which is a indie pen and paper game, to speak and to analyze and to allow students to think a bit deeper about authors such as Althusser, Fisher, or Duluth and Guattari, okay? Then my students also have the chance, in some courses at least, in the elective ones, to present, design, and discuss games they have made themselves instead of writing a final paper or instead of taking a final exam. So games are part of the evaluation, of course, as well, in some courses at least, in some courses. My research, if you have spoken to me during the weeks I've been here, I probably have said that I work on gender and sexuality in games, and that's basically the summary. My PhD dissertation, which I wrote and defended 10 years ago, and that makes me feel kind of old, had this title, Corporeality, Identity, and Digital Culture, Gender, and Sexuality in Video Games. It's a title I don't like anymore, but that's the problem with titles, that they grow old, and you also grow old, and there's a disconnection between time, there's an asynchrony, and two meaningful articles that are derived from my dissertation would be Teenage Heroes and Evil Deviants, Sexuality and History in JRPGs. I work a lot on JRPGs, and the type of games I played the most are JRPGs. And then push, press, become, tactility linked to identity configurations in video games. Those two were in some form or another part of my dissertation, in addition to other chapters, of course. More recently, I have been interested in the intersection between non-human avatars and identity configurations, how non-human elements in games allows us to think about back to the human in a sense, even if that may sound contradictory. Flower is a game I analyze in this case, and the article was Multiplicity, Relationality, and Petal Avatars. Then I'm also interested in the queer potential of non-human sound and sounds or noise that is unintelligible. I paid attention to the Mario and Rabbids franchise, and this is the article I wrote, Meaningful Grunts and Radical Blah. I really like this title, however. I love playing in a silly way with titles. And also, I'm interested in identities and politics emerging from historical discourses, in this case, the American frontier or the American frontier myth, and discourses about or around masculinities or gender, really. One of the games I paid attention to when I was studying this was Red Dead Redemption 2, but there were others. I used, for instance, the Oregon Trail a lot in class precisely when I have to speak about the American frontier myth, which is one of the units I have to cover as part of my courses. And this is the article, Playing with Cowboys, Outlaws, and Spacefarers. One of the, I could say weaknesses, but I don't feel it, and I don't leave it as a weakness in the way I approach research, is that I tend to become interested in a variety of things, and that makes me scatter a bit. Like I write about the Far West, and then I write about noise and sound, and then I write about pedals. That's the way I work, that's the way my mind works, and that's the way I will die, I guess, writing and researching. Last year, I co-edited a book on time and temporality, or queer time and temporality, called Unbound Queer Time in Literature, Cinema, and Video Games. It's open access. It's free to access from the Routledge webpage. So if you're interested, go ahead. It has, if I remember correctly, 15 chapters, and 5 of them are on games, and I will mention a few of them. So the video games part is not a token, it's a third of the book. So yeah. So what am I doing here? And by here, you might think about here at the Center of Excellence. I have spent a month and a week, more or less, here. I came here at the beginning of October, and I will go back to Spain mid-December. So what am I doing here at the Center of Excellence, but also what I'm doing here talking, and I will not talk about myself anymore. So one of the things I'm doing during my time here with you is writing a chapter on queer asynchronies in video games. And the other thing I'm doing is preparing, writing, and thinking about a book proposal. That part is slashed because I'm not talking about it today. I'm only talking about the chapter I'm writing, which is almost done. So yeah, I'm doing those two things, but here, and here means here now, I'm only talking about the chapter on queer time. In order to write this chapter, I'm paying attention to 3 elements, really, or as I say there, the chapter studies the 3 following things. One thing, of course, my chapter does is to take a look at the way queer time has been studied in queer studies. In queer studies, temporality really is everywhere, even when authors do not realize, or even when as scholars or readers do not realize that temporality is almost always present in many of the issues queer studies discusses. Another thing I'm doing, of course, is studying how time and temporality have been studied in game studies. I'm using queer there in brackets because time and temporality is both discussed as queer time and non-queer time in game studies quite often. And some of the authors I will be discussing later talk about queer time, talk about time, but not necessarily about queer time. And then I think, of course, about specific cases of queer asynchronies in games. I can advance, or I can use a minor spoiler here, which I will develop later, that I think about three types of asynchronous, mechanical ones, and narrative ones, and what I call extra-ludic asynchronous. If you think at the end of the talk that extra-ludic is not that useful, that there are other ways of calling this, I'm of course open to this. I'm also writing this chapter in Spanish. So many of the things, for instance, this in Spanish is extra-ludico, which is almost the same. But if it doesn't work for you, or if you have advice, I will of course be totally open to consider it and discuss it. I will explain what they mean to me, even if they are pretty obvious. So this is the basic structure of my talk. This is basically what I will be doing in the following 20 minutes. I have 40 minutes in total, but I'm sure that I will speak for a bit less than that. So as I was saying earlier, in queer studies, time and temporality are everywhere, are everywhere. Sometimes in a very obvious and direct way. For instance, if you start talking about and thinking, reading and studying queer time, you will probably start with Elizabeth Freeman, or probably Elizabeth Freeman will be one of the first authors you come across. Freeman has two main ideas that are relevant for us today. One is that identities are bound to chrononormativity. That means that the way we understand ourselves, the way we understand our lives, and the way we live and have expectations of our lives are bound to social rules around time. We understand that we have to take specific steps in life, that what is valuable and what is productive, what is good in our lives is always bound by time in one way or another. In a career kind of way, but also in a bodily sense of the word. Okay, and that culture is a producer and a reproducer of those temporal bindings, meaning that we understand time the way we do because there is a body of culture reproducing those ideas, that we are in a sense invited to understand time and temporality in the way we understand it, because there are many cultural examples that in a sense interpellate us to understand time the way we do. Then other authors such as Dana Luciano or Lee Edelman say that we as individuals are pushed towards specific identities that are bound to productivity and reproduction. So in a sense, we are invited to understand our lives as valuable as long as we are producing and as long as we are reproducing ourselves in a literal way, okay? Examples of this in culture, I mentioned that Freeman says that culture reproduces us, can be found in games very easily. For instance, in Fire Emblem Awakening, you find that both at the mechanical level and also at the narrative level. If you have played this, have you played this game? If you remember, it's very easy to lose units, especially if you are playing on the mode that allows you to lose units in battle. But at the same time, the game invites you, let's say, to find love or to push the characters to find love. When they pair up, they have children in the future, and those children travel back in time to the present of the protagonist and join the party in battle. Meaning that in a game where you can lose units quite frequently, there is also a system based, that revolves around literally breeding that allows you to increase the number of units you have available. And by doing that, also the narrative elements are increased because there are more characters with more things to say, with more plot points to participate in. So this is an example of reproduction being presented as something good, something desirable, both mechanically and narratively. If a more recent game or a more recent example would be Night Rain. Have you played Night Rain? No, you have. Okay, Night Rain, in a sense, is a very oppressive example of how to manage time. You are given a very specific amount of time, and the game really is about a balance between the player's skill and how you understand what you have to do in the allotted amount of time. You have to be productive, and that's it. And if you are not, you lose horribly, unless you are a genius with the controller. Butler, who is another key name in gender studies and queer studies, talks about the importance of or the role that performativity plays in our identities. In a very basic way, our identities are what we do with our bodies, with our actions, with our words. There's a performative element to every identity. This performative element has a clear connection with time, in the sense that performativity and identity formation and the keeping of your identity requires a sort of repetition through time. It needs to be maintained in time and through time. So time is also of course, there as a key element. Repetition is then or can be viewed or has been viewed as a producer of social and ideological sameness. In a sense, we are forced to follow similar rhythms and that produce similar identities, similar similar. These are the NSYNC. I see some people laughing. I also laughed when sometimes I use silly. I have silly moments when I'm presenting, and when I'm preparing this, I laugh. Like the other day, I laughed sitting at my desk, like in a very silly way. So in a sense, repetition is a sort of agreed or imposed sometimes social choreography that we dance in order to be normal, to be read as normal in a sense, or what society thinks normal is or means. I, of course, question or challenge the meaning of normal. But also also repetition can be seen as a radical tool that we use precisely to question, to show how constructive the meaning of repetition is. If 5 of you are here dancing the same tune and I suddenly step in and do something silly, something that opposes your repetition, I'm not only putting the spotlight on my own actions, I'm also challenging the meaning, the silliness, the awkwardness, the constructive nature of your actions, of your choreography in a sense. Lauren Berland, for instance, is an author that challenges or that offers a more positive view or that discusses the revolutionary potential of repetition in a sense. Ben Munoz, of course, invites us to think about the future with hope. He thinks that we queer people might feel that the present has no place and no time for us, but when we think about possible futures, then queer identities become far more possible and far more doable in a sense, okay? Then I'm almost done with this section. Authors such as Dinshaw or Fretero invites us to challenge historical visions of the past. Historical visions that, sorry, I will repeat myself, that historically have offered a vision of the past where queerness was not a thing, where there were no queer individuals or no queer actions. That's a lie. They show us that. What they do is to study the past, and by past I mean the Middle Ages mostly and the pre-modern eras, to show instances, actions that even if they were not read necessarily as being queer, are queer to a modern standard or to a modern sensibility. And in that sense, they, in a sense, enlightened and accompany current identities so that they don't feel so alone or so, in a sense, special from a temporal perspective. And then finally, Setkovich, and probably I mispronounced this, thinks or invites us to think about the specific way queer identities face and understand time and temporality. And as a result of that, how any attempt to study, preserve, curate, or really approach culture emerging from culture, from queer culture should take into account and should respect, should understand the temporality or the particular temporality that emerges from it. So in order to preserve queer culture, because queer individuals live and experience time differently, that preservation should take into account that particular way of approaching temporality. So against chrononormativity or against the enforced way of seeing time as something lineal that approaches us, there are a number of alternatives. We can think about the radical power of owning one's own time, of saying, okay, society is inviting me to live life this way, but this is constructed. This is not the way I have to live forcibly. Then the generative potential of showing others that there are other alternatives with time, that's saying, okay, time is constructed, so do something with it. Both the conservative and the radical potential of repetition. And then the importance of revisiting the past in order to show light or shed light to the present. Okay. And finally, understanding that queer individuals have a special or a particular relationship with time, and that needs to be into account when studying or dealing or preserving queer culture. Okay, this is the 5 elements or the 5 ideas I want you to take into account. Then time and temporality is, of course, also present in game studies, as many of you know. There is work and there are articles and research papers who, of course, talk about classifications of time in games. Examples of this would be Scalinan's, Did I murder? Yeah, okay. Relation between user time and event time. Zagala and Michael Mateas offer a four-way distinction between four different types of time: game world time, real world time, coordination time, and fictive time, which I find that is very well complemented and expanded by Enrico Gandolfi's discussion of play window. Gandolfi is also expanding and borrowing from Bateman and Boone, but yeah. So when we combine the four types of time that Zagala and Mateas discussed with Gandolfi, you have a very thorough, at least my vision of what time might be, or the different types of time that are present in games. Then Jaimani discusses the diachronies and synchronies in games, which I'm also using extensively in my paper. And Tom Apperley, in case you're familiar with him, I'm not sure. Then he discusses rhythm, repetition, and dressage, or training, which of course have a clear connection with time. When I was saying earlier, the potential, the conservative potential, but also the radical potential of repetition, I was, in my mind at least, connecting with some of the things that you say, Tom, in your book. So there are, of course, examples of queer temporality in games. One of them, for instance, is Mainen study of creep time in Nights in the Woods. According to Mainen, the way the game portrays and reproduces the time of a person who is differently able but also queer is very well represented both mechanically and narratively. One thing. David Matencio, if you were here 4 years ago, he was a visiting scholar. He's also my former PhD student. I'm his co-director. And he also has explored the way, actually in a book chapter, in the book I edited, he also has studied the way queerness was already a part of British and Spanish literature during the Middle Ages, during the Siglo de Oro, so picaresque novels mostly, and how there's a connection between the queerness of the past and the queerness that we experience now when we play with rogues. Using Astarion there is a bit, I'm cheating a bit, because I mean, you can play with Astarion in any way you want. I mean, he's a rogue initially, but you can change his class. And he's still behaving the same way. But yeah, initially you have that at least. And then Christina Shan offers a very thorough and a very complete view of how queer time is represented both narratively again and mechanically in Gone Home. Okay, these are three examples. Of course, there are more. Shan in her chapter borrows from Ruberg and their work on working simulators. Ruberg says that potentially, at least potentially, working simulators are an example of queer games because of the way they approach objectives and the way they approach wandering. Okay. However, so this is what I'm saying here. In a sense, games that treat objectives in an open, in a free, or that make them become almost invisible, or that allow some sense of freedom away from objectives, are queerer. But then Ruber also does more things with that. Then Ruber also challenges that notion. In a basic way, games such as this, such as working simulators, defy lineal and production-oriented conceptualizations of games, of time in games. Ruber also offers us a warning, and they say that these games also sometimes contain going back to the straight lines. In a sense, the freedom that they offer open the temporal lines to something more than a line, but that there are also elements that make these games go back to lines. For instance, speed runs. Speed runs is an example that Ruber uses. Another scholar who also uses examples of games that forcibly invite players to go back to a lineal understanding of time is Sapkowski. Sapkowski discusses Mass Effect, the trilogy, and he thinks that Mass Effect is a great example, at least at the beginning, of a circular way of understanding time. If you have played the game, the Reapers come every 1,000, every 2,000, from time to time they come back to the universe, or to our universe, to collect advanced civilizations, make them go back to zero, and then force them to start again. And then once those civilizations go back to a certain level of development, they come back again and they force cultures to go back to zero again. According to Sapkowski, the role of the players is to stop that and to make a time go back to a line, to allow not only humanity, but all the other races that are relevant in the Mass Effect series to continue thriving without the interruption of the circularity that the Reapers introduce. And then, of course, chess makes us question what a narrative is in games. And one of the key elements in that questioning of what a narrative is in game is, is connected or has to do with temporality. For chess, there are two elements that makes us think that a narrative is a narrative and not something else. And when these are absent or present in a game, that's when we identify those games as games and not as something else. One is a build-up that delays the climax. That means the development of the story when things are happening and leading towards something. And that something is the second element that must be present, which is the climax, okay? Chess uses these words very intentionally. And if you think that they are close to sex, is because chess is actually using these words in this sense. She is inviting us to think about the sexuality or sometimes the heteronormativity behind most narratives, or at least most what people would consider as normative narratives. According to chess, whenever we fail to see games as narratives, and there are many games that are difficult to classify as narratives, at least right away, it's because they do not offer climaxes, because they do not offer that release that we have come to expect from traditional narratives. They still deal, according to chess, with a narrative middle, or with a continuous build-up, okay, with a work that never sees release, or that never gives you release, okay? However, I think that there are many micro-orgasmic moments in games. There are literal micro-orgasms. This is more like a dumb example than anything. But also think about mechanics and things that games have in order to feel like we have accomplished something that might be only meaningful for a few minutes right after the match. And this is an example of the play of the play of the match, of a player playing as diva. But it is still there. It's still some form of climax, like, haha, I killed 5 players with my ultimate attack. In a sense, that's a climax. That's something that gives you release. And this would be an example. Can we increase the volume a bit? Oh, yes. I should.
No, this foregone is they going to get the freeze?
Okay, look at the 2 players. This is the final of the VGC tournament played in Las Vegas this weekend. Okay, and this would be another micro-orgasmic example, okay? So, hey, listen. Narrative and mechanically, most games reproduce our temporal expectations. Okay, and this is a key idea I want you to at least I don't know, take from everything I'm saying or extract from everything I'm saying. Most games derived from everything I've said so far push us towards understanding games in a very specific way because we are invited to think temporality in also very specific ways, okay? And the release and build-up example would be an example, okay? And that in turn might define for us what a game is or not. Sometimes we understand what a game is based on the way they deal with time. And I will offer you examples later. Ruberg and Chess, both authors say that games are queer because they play with time in unique ways, and that's true. But there are two ideas that we can extract from that, or that we can expand from there. One is the first one is that queer games often establish their own way of dealing with time and with temporality, precisely because they are queer, and queerness deals with time differently. And the other one is that many games that play with time differently can very easily be read as queer, okay? They look very similar, but they are not the same actually, even at least not in my head. Maybe you're thinking, Juan, you're just repeating yourself. Yeah, maybe I am. I don't think so. Okay, so these unique ways of playing, of representing, or thinking about time and temporality is what I have in mind when I talk about, or when I use the word asynchrony, okay, which is the key topic of my chapter. So, and I'm almost done. I'm very optimistic with time. I always think that I will speak for 20 minutes and I end up talking for the full time I was allotted. Okay, so, but this should be quick. So I think about three types of asynchronous, mechanical narrative, and extra-ludic, and I will offer you a few examples of what I'm thinking about when I use this classification. So I think, for instance, about games that understand objectives and goals in a flexible, open, or simply different way. And different, I know that is a word that doesn't mean much, but in this case, it's a word I need to use. So games that understand goals differently, and those goals end up affecting the way players understand, the way they use their time when they're playing, but also the way they think about the game outside of the game itself. Examples for this would be Flower, of course, and this is the game I'm most familiar with, Journey as well, but to some extent also Sky, Children of Sky, okay? Then I also think about games that make a point about repetition, that make players repeat actions in a meaningful way, or that force players, or invite, force is too strong of a word, that invite players to think about why they are repeating actions, or what's the meaning behind those actions. And this will be two examples I am discussing, both Loft, which is accessible as a Flash game from any browser, and Celeste, of course. Then games with lengths and with rhythms that function differently. Dysphoria would be an example of this. Games that force us to make decisions that have a clear temporal component. Has anyone played a normal phone, a normal Lowe's phone? If you have, then you know what happens at the end, for instance. The ending would be a very good example of something that works differently, both mechanically and narratively, and that makes you think about why you are deciding, why you are making the decision you are making. It's a special experience. So if you haven't played it, I would suggest you do. Then, of course, there are narrative asynchronous. Examples of this would be games that play with the linearity of the narrative time queerly. The way they present their story is non-linear, or plays with the linearity, or plays with the way play with the linearity of the stories. And I'm running out of time. That's an example. I always pronounce this game as 1,000 times resist. How do you guys pronounce this? 1,000 times resist? Okay, I thought I have made up that, maybe it was 1,000x resist, or 1,000 resist, and you ignore the x. In some games, you have to do that. Or in some, like Hunter x Hunter, you have the x between Hunter x Hunter, but it's Hunter x Hunter. It's not Hunter times Hunter. No, it's okay.
X could be a 10.
Huh?
The X could be 10 as well.
Yeah, but 1010 resist? That's a bit weird. Okay, yeah. I'm open to that as well. Why not?
Resist 10.
Yeah, resistant. Yeah, resist. Yeah, but where are you from? If you say 10, 10, like, well, yeah, okay. 1010 resist. Okay. Also games that tell stories that, of course, portray the lived experience of queer individuals, and this is the most obvious examples when we think about queer games. We instinctively think about games where queer individuals or queer narratives are presented. Okay. Or games that make a point at representing the way queer individuals experience their own temporality. Okay, and these are examples. I know that. Have you played Final Fantasy 16? I know that that Sid being queer can be part of my own reading, but I choose to think that Sid is queer. Okay, Dion is objectively queer, and Life is Strange. Yeah, offers a queer narrative, and that's it. Okay, then also, okay, you should be able to. I made a skip here. Then I also think about extra-ludic asynchronies, and this is what my presentation was not showing. So yeah, I've skipped that step there. And I think about games, for instance, that offer or that go through review, discussion, or play windows that are specific or that are different from commercial games, precisely because they are indie and or queer, but mostly queer. Okay. So think, for instance, about games that are sold, distributed, or offered using different means that the usual platforms people buy games from, or vulnerable games that need to be preserved or that are lost forever precisely because of their queerness and because of the temporality that they faced. Last week with the speaker we had, Mark discussed the need of some games to be curated very specifically. And that's not because of some randomness, it's because queer individuals, queer contents face the aggression of individuals who are not okay with queerness being part of the world, and they attack the life, the literal life of queer individuals, and of course of queer culture. So that's another asynchrony. The broken time that some cultural elements that some games face precisely because of their queerness or because of the temporality that they have to face. Okay, so I'm almost done. So why studying queer asynchronies in games? This is pretty obvious, but I didn't know how to finish. I was writing this yesterday at 6, and it's like, oh, yeah, I want to finish. So sorry if this sounds simple. It doesn't feel simple to me because many of the things I'm about to say are important to me, at least as a scholar. So one of the reasons why we should study asynchronies in games is that we become aware of the way chrononormativity is reproduced in games, the way games sometimes or oftentimes reproduce a very narrow, a very conservative, a very normalized vision or understanding of time and temporality. Also, because by studying queer time in games or asynchronies in games, we support forms of designing and the identities behind those designs who embody, who live, or who even suffer time differently. Okay, so it's a way of paying tribute to certain people and certain studios and certain games. And also because mechanically and narratively and personally, it's something that I find fun. And I know that fun is, again, a word that doesn't mean anything, but in this context, it's a conscious choice. It is fun, it is engaging, it is something that fills my mind and lights I was about to say my soul, but that sounds a bit too religious, puts a smile in my brain, if you prefer that, okay? And of course, because we help others imagine other temporalities, other ways, other forms of being, other futures where their identities are and will be possible. And we think about times in a more, well, delete more in a queerer, freer, or more radical way. Okay. This is the second time I'm borrowing from the the movements. I'm stealing from your culture in a conscious way, but yeah, I wanted to in a sense. So thank you. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, of course, I will be more than happy to welcome them. So thanks.
Thank you, Juan. We indeed have time. Questions and comments. Here you go.
Thank you very much for the talk. And to say honestly, I am already a bit upset that the chapter will be in Spanish or is in Spanish, because that is one of the things that I would love to read. And I have some thoughts and a question.
Yeah.
What you have presented, what you have discussed today, is relatively close to what I'm thinking for my own research. And among other things, speedrunning is one of the topics that comes out quite a lot in queer game studies in relation to both queer time and queer space. And from my knowledge, there are two major contradicting points that many queer game study scholars, Ruberg also, voice. One of them says about speedrunning as basically a very normative, very cis-heteronormative practice that usually contributes to straightlining the game. The other one is that speedrunning, although as almost anything can be used to do that, is a queer way of going through the spaces, hence seeing it only as something negative is a bit limiting towards it as a tool. I would love to ask your thoughts, elaborations on this part, also in relation to time and temporality parts, because what speedrunning can do, among others, apart from going against the radical completionism that is usually part of hardcore core gamer image, also allows breaking the timing of playing itself and breaking the idea of productive use of time to collect as much as one can. So if you could elaborate a bit more on speedrunning, your own stance, and how it relates to Asynchronies, that would be great.
Okay, yeah. Well, I don't need the mic to answer, right? Yeah. Okay, I have to stay here and use my mic, the one I have here. Okay, thank you, Mark, for your comments and question. I'm a very difficult person to ask questions to, because for me things are never white or black. And your question definitely invites me to say a very gray, to offer you a very gray answer. The first, I have thought about two different things when you were talking. First is that it depends on the game, really. A game that is a walking simulator, or that game that is initially queer, objectively, and by speed running it, you delete, you basically erase any queer element. So you insert objectives and you break the original time to impose your own. That I would agree with what authors such as Ruber have to say, in a sense. Okay, so yeah, we have that. But then I also think about games such as Hades, for instance. Hades is a game that a typical run of a normal, of a regular player can take 40 minutes, maybe 30, 40 minutes. But then you have people completing a route, I'm thinking now about Hades 2, in under 4 minutes. And then there are videos online of the designers watching those speedrun attempts that basically break their games, basically offer a counter way of playing the game. And maybe Hades is not the best example of queerness, or maybe those attempts of queerness, but I think that attempt of breaking the games works in both ways, in both directions. it can renormalize games that were not that were queer to begin with, but can also insert some queer elements when applied to games that are already objective or achievement heavy, or that are based on repetition, on labor mostly. In order to be successful in Hades, you have to die and reattempt and even beat the final boss several times in order to see the actual ending. So that requires time, and breaking that to some degree does have, at least for me, a queer touch at least. But then the other thing I thought about when you were talking is that one thing I always think about when I see people trying or attempting speedrun is who has the time to practice this much, who has the time to become this good at a game in a way that you can even break it. And time is also a resource, it's also a privilege in a sense. So I wonder if many speedrunning attempts have a kind of privilege of a person who has a job that allows them to have such a big amount or such a significant amount of free time so that they can not only complete the game, play the game, which is in itself a privilege, a material privilege and a time-based privilege, but also play it to a degree where you can break it time-wise. And that, in a sense, queerifies, eliminates any queer element that speed running could have, at least potentially, or from that perspective. Have I answered your question? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, more questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I've been thinking a bit about the body of works that you've been showing.
Mm-hmm.
Could you go to like 1 or 2 slides back where you have the 3 types of queer times, right? Just because
Oh yeah.
I tend to...
The 3 types, right?
Yeah, the 3 types.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was wondering about, because you seem to be very much focusing on the empirical aspects of these games, right? These games, you select a body of works and then you make these kind of types, right? So I was wondering, when I specifically am focusing now on Final Fantasy 16, because it has that representation of queerness in what I would call an almost like obvious traditional way, right? We see queer characters there. Yet the narrative structure of Final Fantasy 16 is what I would then still call very heteronormative, right? It is like it leads to a climax, every chapter, climax, then it's done. Can those 2 things exist at the same time? And if so, what would you then emphasize here?
Yeah. One of the things can I? Sorry, I wasn't sure. I was not interrupting you. Oh, okay. The issue with, Final Fantasy 16, there are examples, and Final Fantasy 16 is definitely one of them, of things that in a sense, Final Fantasy 16 introduces a queer couple with Jon and his boyfriend, and that in itself offering a valid couple, a couple that is to some extent successful in their love, is in itself a breaking of the norm, a breaking of the time. But then Final Fantasy 16 also does something that many JRPGs and many Japanese texts do about queer people, and is to kill them. Like the destiny of queer individuals to die, or at least to be unhappy, or to face some type of problems that only or that mostly queer people do. I'm thinking, there are many examples of that, and the fate that Dion faces. He dies like most users of the summoning system. I don't remember the specific name for that. The way he dies follows a very heteronormative way of representing sexuality, where gay people, where queer people are not allowed to exist, or where they are deleted. And that's also true. But in a sense, denouncing, highlighting, discussing the chrononormativity behind that is also important. So yeah, both things are happening. The second part is probably more important. You asked me for which one has more prevalence in a sense. I would say that it is connected to the chrononormativity of sex and sexuality in Japan in a very obvious way, and that's. But again, my job as a scholar, I feel is like denouncing that, saying like this death or this fate, this destiny, is a way of dealing with time, and the alternatives that are offered are never offered to these individuals, and that non-presence is in a sense as an asynchrony, death as an asynchrony. Have I answered your? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, still some time for questions and comments. Sorry, you were behind my back.
No problem. Okay, this is like, maybe, I'm assuming this is a dumb question, right? But is something like a paratext included, sorry, this term, included in this map? This, like, in the extra-ludic synchronities or something like that?
Like what?
Okay, well, so, when you're talking about these little orgasms and you're showing, what game was it? The game with
It was Baldur's
Diva.
Gate, but it was also Overwatch, and it was
Yeah.
also
Yeah, so, and I was thinking, yeah,
Pokemon.
well, there's, if we go by Pornhub stats, we know that there's very many orgasms taking place around Diva and whatever that game is called, Overwatch, right?
Yeah, Overwatch. Yeah.
But that's outside of a game text. It's like in this reconstituted animated porn context taking place in a different kind of site. But is it could queer asynchrony take place across different platforms and so on?
Yeah, in that particular case, that would be an extra-ludic one. When I used the example of Overwatch, I was thinking about mechanical asynchronous mostly. I mean, the joy that players feel because of the game emphasis on you having killed many players in one specific play, in one specific instance. But of course, they use that games or the life that games have outside of the games themselves, like people developing, consuming, creating, discussing porn, would be also a type of asynchrony that introduces queerness from the back door.
Yeah.
Probably that's not the best word here.
Oh, perfect.
It was not intentional. But yeah.
Yeah, well, because I'm just thinking that I missed the name of the scholar, but you're talking about someone who was saying, like, someone who knows what they're talking about needs to be in charge of the archive of this kind of thing, because they can connect all the dots and all this kind of stuff. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, and the phenomena and the person is going to be kind of erased, because it's not necessarily in one thing, it's rather in the connection between them all, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why queer culture is so difficult to preserve is that it happens at many levels, like at the communal level, at the personal level, at communities that are big, that are small, that are present, that are online, that are present and online, that are in the same city but also living across different oceans, and so yeah. The problem I have with opening the door to what people do with games outside, and that's one of the limitations of the extra-ludic, not the limitations, but why I feel that I have to keep those small and not introduce or allow the example that you gave, is that almost everything has a pornographic use or form of consumption. Like any Disney movie, I'm sure that if you find, hey, I want to find these two characters having sex, you will find those two characters having sex. So then everything has a queer asynchrony, and that's so difficult to rightfully study beyond a generalization that everything then has queer temporalities, because everything can be used queerly or can be queerified. But yeah, maybe that's not for a chapter and write, for the chapter and write. That would be another thing by itself. Maybe a book in itself, written by a different scholar. I don't feel ready to address that.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. Yeah. Why not? Yeah.
Although-
That's a linear way of thinking.
Yeah, it's
that's
very
a chrononormative
normative.
way
I'm
of thinking.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
One step sideways, one step backwards, one step forward.
Yeah.
Like kind of a dance.
Yeah. Dressage. Yeah. Like horses. Yeah. Nice.
Someone better take the mic away from me.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
We still have a little bit of time, so some quick question there.
Hello. Thank you for the question, for the talk. Well, you kind of already touched the thing that I wanted to ask you about when you were answering Mark, but there's something that looks like some kind of paradox, and if you could elaborate on that, because to me, when we think about very contemplative experiences that kind of challenge kind of a productivity ideology, if we see this as queer, and I understand that, but at the same time, there is this point about who has the privilege of experiencing that. And in a way, if you think about a game like Flower, you would say, wow, that's a game that is in that mood, but then at the same time, couldn't you even say that it's kind of a aristocratic sort of experience? And perhaps the queerness is when you offer someone who normally does not engage in this kind of experience or does not have the chance or privilege to be in that kind of contemplative experience to experience such a thing. But then we could also ask, well, but who's probably enjoying a game like Flower? Is it the person who would normally never have the experience, or is the person who already has the privilege in their or personal life to enjoy this kind of things? So I don't know. I'm asking this perhaps because when I engage in very contemplative, counterproductive experiences, I also feel a bit of guilt because of this kind of, oh yeah, I have the privilege of being here, but yeah. So
okay, two things. I will start with the actual answer, and then I will offer a personal experience. I mean, nobody can be the perfect queer. Our identities are, and this is very well known, intersectional, right? Like there are queer who are more deeply affected by certain injustices and by certain degrees of privilege, of lack of privilege, and they are still queer, but they are other things in addition to queer. So in a sense, the game being seen as a privilege is not reason enough for me to then suddenly no, you're not queer, because then most games would not be queer, and depending on what position we take, almost okay, every game could be, yeah, you're not queer enough because you are being designed, you are being created from a position of a certain degree of power, and there's always somebody who is queerer than you, and if we do that, then it's a game we don't want to play, because for instance, we're not, and maybe this is not something I want to say, but it's not the same hearing about certain experiences from people who live in a world that is obviously rich, who is part of the first world, and then when they describe their problems, like, okay, your problems are problems. In Spain, we have other problems. And when I say Spain, then there are other people who say, oh my God, you are complaining about Spain? Then wait until you hear from wherever. I mean, there's always these degrees of privilege. And if we use privilege to decide what is queer and what is not, that's tricky. That's tricky. And with Flower, with a specific Flower example of Flower, two things happened to me. I have a chapter, sorry, not a chapter, an article on Flower. Flower was part of my dissertation, and one of the members of the committee, of the members of the committee who were part of my Viva, told me that she was not sure that Flower was a game to begin with. That in itself is proof to me that Flower is queer in very meaningful ways. That unreadability of it being a game or not is in a sense, or at least it's an invitation to think about whether flower is a game or not. And then this article is published in Continuum, which is a cultural studies journal. It's quite good. But my first choice was actually games and culture. And one of the reviewers told me the same when he rejected the article. He told me that in my mind, he was a he, but let's say they told me that I had no right writing an article about flower because they were not sure that flower was a game. So that again, that unreadability for me opens the door to at least question because you said that who has the right or who has the privilege of playing this, but then who has what kind of right or what kind of privilege do people who say that flower is not a game have in return? Like if I say, oh, that's not a game, what kind of power am I exerting? Is it a more meaningful type of power than you who have the opportunity, the privilege of playing flower? Am I making sense or not? No. With a personal story, not so much. But yeah. In my mind, flower is a very difficult topic for me, like a very personal one, as you can see. So yeah. That's my answer.
We have run out of time now. Thank you
Okay,
so much,
thanks.
Juan.
Thank you,
We
everyone,
can
for the
continue. Yes, one more round of applause.
Thanks.
We can continue the discussion during lunch. We're going to lunch next.
Oh,
Is it
okay.
okay for you? I
Yeah,
didn't
of
ask.
course.
So you are free to join us. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks.